back to our little bank. The Victory Savings Bank, which gave out this toy bank, opened in 1921 in Columbia, South Carolina, and it was the first Black-owned bank in the state. The banks at that time were owned by white businessmen, and they would often not do business or not do fair business with Black residents in the state. So if you wanted to open an account, start a line of credit, maybe start a deposit, that kind of thing, you wouldn't be given fair terms, and they might not do business with you at all. So if you can imagine how hard it would be to, buy a house, or maybe increase your holdings or add to your business, or if an emergency came up, you were denied those services. So the Victory Savings Bank opened, and as the only Black-owned business in the state, it had, of course, a wide customer base because there was not any competition. And it was one of the few banks that survived the Great Depression, one of the few Black-owned banks that survived the Great Depression, because it was such a strong bank, and it did so well. And it was actually, I think in 1999, it became like the South Carolina Community Bank or something. So it continued for quite some time. So it was a fixture of really the South in Columbia, but actually statewide, and it had a statewide reach. And you can go visit the building in Columbia, so it's always great to tie an object to a place, so you can go stand in the footprints of whoever picked up this bank. I don't know who actually originally got it, but they got it from here, which is really cool to think about. And they stood in this building, which looked like this. So here's a picture from the inside of the Victory Savings Bank, and people getting those services that they need. So the bank, our little toy bank, is in our Women in Politics show because one of its founders was Modjeska Monteith Simkins. And she is an amazing lady, and who I'm always finding out something new about her every time I go looking. And as the product of the South Carolina public education system from many decades ago, I am very sad I did not learn anything about her, because she is an important person in South Carolina history. But she was one of the founders of the bank. And a little bit about her: she was born in 1899 in South Carolina. Her father was a carpenter and businessman. Her mother was an educator, and the family was committed to helping out neighbors, community service, social justice causes. Since she was a little girl, and she really grew into really be a human rights activist. Really passionate about that, but that started young for her, as did education. And she actually wanted to be a lawyer, but her father thought that wasn't quite appropriate for a woman. So she did not like that, but she did go on to Benedict College, and she became a teacher and taught at Booker T. Washington High School in Columbia. And she taught there until she was married. And when you were married, woman in South Carolina, as a teacher, you could not teach anymore. So you had to quit, which was of course unfair and something she fought against. But she had a very happy marriage, and she and her husband, she was allowed to pursue all of her interests, and he never held her back in any way. So she went on to then work at the Tuberculosis Association in South Carolina, and she was a great public health advocate. She worked specifically with what they called their Negro Division in tuberculosis as their director, but she was fighting for a lot of other public health issues, venereal diseases, which brought her a lot of trouble with her superiors, and eventually she was forced out, and she went to work as the secretary for the NAACP here in South Carolina. So she had a lot of connections. She was in a lot of different community and progressive movements in the state. And then she went on to be one of the founders of the Victory Savings Bank, because she saw a need and she wanted to help. And besides offering services for, say, everyday banking, she and the bank helped people who were fighting for civil rights. in the state of South Carolina. So this picture right here is the plaintiffs from the Briggs v. Elliott case that was eventually rolled into the Brown versus Board of Education case that ended desegregation in public schools. So when these people came forward to fight segregated schools where they lived, they had economic reprisals against them, as did other civil rights activists in South Carolina. People would refuse to sell things to them, buy things from them, raise their rents or their mortgages, call a bill due, all those things. So that was one of the ways that those in power in South Carolina were trying to end the civil rights movement. And so Modjeska and the Victory Savings Bank would offer really low rate loans or financial assistance to people like these. And Modjeska, with her ties to people like the NAACP and others, like she got the NAACP to put a large deposit in Victory Savings Bank, which then got 2% interest, which then helped the bank help other people out. And she also had an article in Jet Magazine that called for help. So people would not just send in donations, but they would put a deposit in the bank or do business with the bank that would help the bank out, and then the bank could then service and help out the community. So that's a story that I didn't know either about Victory Savings Bank or Modjeska Monteith Simkins, who is shown here a little bit later, and she spent all of her life working as a human rights activist. Her work got her the attention for the House Un-American Activities Committee, and she was often branded as a communist, but she was just someone who wanted to see peace, someone who wanted to see equality. So you can find out more about her, and you can come visit our little bank in our exhibit that's up right now. So I hope you enjoyed our little look at our object, and come by and visit the museum soon. Thanks so much.